Greetings and welcome back. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Been a little bit busy, and to be honest with you, I've been kind of playing more games, so I have not really had the time to sit down and record one of these. But I figured with the newest release of the Resident Evil Requiem DLC that just came out, the free expansion of Leon Must Die, I think is what it's called. I figured I'd come back on here and talk about my thoughts on Resident Evil Requiem as a whole. It is the 30th anniversary, so it is a big deal for Resident Evil fans. The series has been through ups and downs. I jumped on board with the Nintendo GameCube release of Resident Evil Remake that came out in 2002, and ever since then, I've played every single mainline title. I've gone back and kind of played some of the older titles as well, but GameCube is really where I jumped on, and I started to experience Resident Evil. But first off, I guess I'm just going to talk about the title in general. I got a weird relationship with this game. When I first started playing it, I really wasn't clicking with it. I wasn't liking it. I thought Grace's sections were a lot of fun, and I was enjoying that, and I was kind of excited to get to Leon. I was like, let's go. I want to get to Leon. I want to get to that Resident Evil 4 remake gameplay that I love. I'm excited to get to that. And I was a little underwhelmed with the Raccoon City area, like that whole beginning section where you're running around trying to get the detonator parts and get through the gate and all that. That kind of, I don't know, that kind of was, I wasn't really digging it, and I kind of put it down and picked it back up. And eventually I did come back, and at some point, and I don't really know why, the game finally did sort of click with me. So in Resident Evil 9, you play as two characters. The first is Grace Ashcroft, and the second is Leon Kennedy. And you do flip back and forth a couple of times to Leon, but really not that much. The first half is pretty much exclusively Grace, and the second half is kind of exclusively Leon. And I've kind of come around to love both gameplays differently, but as I said before, it took me a while to sort of understand what this game was doing because I was kind of getting whiplash. I was enjoying the creepy, scary survival horror elements of Grace, and then all of a sudden you'd play a little section as Leon, and you were just action man, and you could kill everybody. There's a great section in the game where you're playing as Grace, and you come across this giant chunk monster zombie guy that takes up the whole hallway. Like, he's huge. And as her, you can do nothing but run away, or you die, right? You cannot really kill him. It's very difficult. And then the very first thing that you do with Leon once you get to the hospital area is kill one of those enemies. And so when I first saw him, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to sneak around him. And I kind of forgot I was Leon for a second. I was like, wait a minute. This is really two different games spliced together, which at the end of the day, I really enjoyed. But it did take me a while to sort of wrap my head around what I was doing. Because usually in Resident Evil, for most of the campaign, you play as one character. Like, in the old school ones, you'd either pick Jill or you'd pick Chris, or you'd pick Claire or Leon or whatever. And sometimes you'd play little sections as other characters, but for the most part, you really stuck with one character. And so the idea that this game was sort of split right down the middle, and not just two different characters, but two completely different gameplay styles, was sort of jarring at first. And it's a first for the Resident Evil. And honestly, I hope this is sort of the direction that they're going to go moving forward, because you sort of get to have your cake and eat it too. Resident Evil has had a tough time straddling that line between, are we survival horror? Are we action? You know, yes, there are zombies and it's scary, but you've also got guns and there's explosions. So there has been a little bit of an identity crisis in the franchise for a while. And I'm glad to see that they're really sort of solidifying who they are and what they want to do moving forward. Overall, if you are a Resident Evil fan, I think this is the best of the modern new, I'll say that in quotations, the best new Resident Evil, because they have made new games that are remakes that I do think are better. I think the remake of Resident Evil 2 is better. I think the Resident Evil 4 remake is better. But as far as I'd say the modern trilogy is 7, 8, 9, this is definitively the best of those three. While I do like those two, I thought 7 was a great restart. I thought that was a great way to sort of come back to the roots. I don't care for the Ethan character, and you play as him in 7 and 8, and after 7, I was really done with him. I wanted to move on. His story concluded. I didn't really want to revisit with him, and unfortunately in 8, you play as him again. So I was glad in 9 that we didn't see him anymore. He was completely gone, and we were back to, a character that we love with Leon, and even a great new character with Grace. I think she's fantastic. She's one of the best new characters since, the original trilogy. I think that she fits right in there. She's perfect. She's a really great character. I'm not going to get into story spoilers for those that have not played, but I think the story is a classic Resident Evil story. It's pretty par for the course there. No new crazy revelations. There are a few sections in there that I felt that weren't really needed, like the whole clone thing of that guy. If you know, you know. I don't want to spoil it for you, but there's a guy in there that's sort of clone, sort of not, and he doesn't really even do anything. And I don't know. I didn't need that. That was fine. I wish that the main doctor I wish that Gideon was the main only bad villain. Having the other guy was, to me, not necessary. You didn't need it. It wasn't necessary. Shockingly, and one thing that I have not heard a lot of people talking about with this game, when they reviewed this title, is that this has a lot of like modern day sort of, political interesting stuff in here. There's a whole of course this franchise has always been about like, in Japan out here it's called Biohazard, so it's always been about like viruses and, diseases and how they infect people and yada yada, which is sort of in line with, we just had that big virus on the cruise ship thing just happen. But not only that, there's a big section towards the end of this game where you realize that they've been cloning and stealing children and testing weapons on them. And there's this whole underground rich organization that has basically been trafficking kids. And I was like, wow, there's a lot here with modern stuff that's going on. And I haven't heard any reviewers talking about that. I think that's very interesting. It's like, wow, we haven't, especially with they've only got like young girls, and it's all these rich guys, and they're kind of creepy, and they're doing these bioweapon stuff, and they're trying to control the masses. And it's like, wow, man, this is very much what's on everyone's mind and what everyone's talking about politically. And it's shocking to me to play this game and then listen to other people's reviews and just nobody mentions that. I don't know if maybe they just don't want to get political, but it's like, I don't know. I don't think that it's really too political to talk about what other people are discussing in the modern, forums and what people are talking to each other online. So I thought that was very interesting because these games are in development for quite a few years, right? I think this game went into development after RE8 was released in 2020. So this has been, I think they've been working on this for the last, 5 years, 6 years. And so for them to start that process 6 years ago and be working on it for that long and have it come out at a very, important time when all of this stuff is still very fresh in our minds, it's interesting. It's like, wow, I don't know. That's just one angle of it that I thought was interesting that people have not really discussed as much. But I thought was, when I was playing it, I was like, wow, this is like stuff they're talking about on the news. Well, not really on the news, but, all the podcasts, and people are, at least conspiracy theories. These are, people are trying to piece these together with the files that, the Department of Justice has released, and people are trying to figure out what's going on. And here it is in a game where people are examining this. What would this be like? And it's like, oh, this is pretty interesting. But aside from that angle of it, it is a great horror game at the beginning. It is a really good action game at the end. I would say that the end is weaker as far as that intro to Raccoon City. Eventually, of course, like all Resident Evil titles, you sort of end up in a lab. And I heard some people complaining about the lab section. And I got to be honest with you, the lab section to me, I thought was great. I thought this is not a spoiler, but once you get to the RPD onward, I was loving it. I was like, this is great. We're back. It's just that little section where you're getting detonator pieces that I particularly didn't really care for. Just because Raccoon City to me was always a really aesthetically interesting city to look at. Like when you're in RE2 or in RE3, it's got this interesting, distinctive look. And I love revisiting Raccoon City, but in this one, it's just like, everything's like gray, and it's just dusty, and it's just, everything kind of looks, the color palette's kind of the same everywhere you're going, and it's, I don't know. And I understand that it's a city that's been nuked, but that was like, like 30 years now, so it's, I don't know. I just kind of wish that maybe it was a little overgrown with plants or like, it just had a little bit of a different look, I don't know. Those have been some of the aesthetic changes that I would have made. But overall, really solid game. Really, really enjoyed it. Now, the question I think that everybody might be asking is, where did I play Resident Evil? Did I play it on the PC? Did I play it on the PS5? Did I play it on the Switch 2? And the answer might surprise you, because I was going to buy this game on the PS5. I was just going to say, hey, this will be the definitive version. It's going to run way better. I don't trust Nintendo to run third-party games very well, and I think that just staying safe and getting the PS5 is the way to go. But after the reviews, and after the way that it looks, and after the way that it runs, I played it and beat it on Switch 2. And I was shocked. It ran beautifully. The entire game was flawless. I mean, it was great. And for me, it was so exciting because this sort of signaled to me I can trust Nintendo again when it comes to third-party titles. Like this is a great way forward. It comes at a good time for me because while I love my PS5, it runs really well. I enjoy it. It's great. Some of the recent DRM things that PlayStation has been doing is sort of frightening me a little bit. That whole thing about if you buy a digital game after April 1st of 2026, you've got to have a constant internet connection, or it has to check in every 30 days. Otherwise, you won't be able to use those purchases. And I've heard some competing arguments about, well, after the 30 days, it just has to check in one more time because they don't want you to exploit a refund, because apparently if you buy it, download it, and then refund it, and then turn off your internet, you get to keep the digital game and you get the refund. And then this is just going to stop people from being able to exploit that. And it's like, I guess, but I don't know. I'm just going to give it a little bit of time. I'm going to give it 6 months. And if people say, oh, it's resolved itself, it's no longer an issue, okay, I'll go back and I'll keep buying PlayStation games. But as of right now, I don't want to buy any PlayStation games and just kind of say, hold on, until I know more about what I'm buying, I'm not going to do it. And it comes at a great time because here we are with Resident Evil and in another instance, Pragmata for the Switch 2. They run great. I've got it docked. I'm playing it on a nice computer monitor that does up to 120 hertz, and it just runs fine. I get the experience that I want, and then not only that, but I can take it with me on a trip if I want to go someplace, or if I'm on vacation and I'm going to do a weekend, out of town someplace, I can just bring the whole Switch with me. It's the Switch is finally what I really wanted it to be. With the original Switch, it couldn't really run third-party titles very good. Like, Doom was okay. Rocket League was fun to play. I really just didn't... I don't know. I still would go back to the PlayStation to play those major titles. I don't know. You could kind of play them, but they were like 30 frames, and they were just kind of chunky, and they just didn't really work that great. But to me, in my opinion, Resident Evil Requiem is the definitive way to play it. I love it. Now, I'm sure a lot of hardcore PC fans will say, well, you don't have this, you don't have that, the huge Digital Foundry fans. Yeah, of course, that's the way you're going to want to play it. But for me, I'm a casual guy. As long as I get the experience and it runs well and it stays above 30 frames, I'm fine. I believe this runs at 40 or 50. I can't really tell. But for me, it was seamless. When I was in combat, I wasn't noticing any, stuttering. I didn't notice any issues. It was great. It was everything I wanted. And like I said, I was never going to play that new Indiana Jones, or not new, but the Indiana Jones game that came out for the Xbox and later the PlayStation. That always kind of caught my eye. But once again, there was a big boycott because people were like, well, when you buy the disc, it's just a download key. There's no information on that disc. And so I was like, okay, I'll probably skip that game. It looks fun and people say it's great, but I'll probably skip it. And now it's releasing on the Switch 2, and apparently it runs really, really great. And it's completely on a cartridge. It's not a game key card. It runs right off the cartridge. And so for me, that's a day one buy. I get the complete game, minus the DLC that will, of course, come later. But I don't know, 60 gigs right off the game card. Like, it's not a key card. It's not a download thing. Like, I can just pop it into the Switch and go, no internet required. It's like, yeah, I will support that. And it runs great. So for me, as long as the games keep running well, I'm going to continue to watch reviews and performance videos before I just blindly buy a third-party title. But I think for me, this solidifies the Switch 2 as my console of choice for this generation. It really has shocked me. The only problem that I have with it is still that micro SD card express, because the one that I have in my system now is only 256, and I really want a terabyte. Because these games are getting bigger and bigger, and a lot of them are either download only or they're game key cards, so you've got to download the entire title to the hard drive. And there's just not as much memory, and you've just got to delete games and then, move things around every single time you want to play something that's big. Like Indiana Jones is like 60 gigs. So if that was going to be download only, I wouldn't buy it, because I just don't want to delete a whole bunch of stuff off my hard drive to download 60 gigs. But if I can play it off the game card and not have to erase anything off my SD card, then great. And for those of you wondering, Resident Evil Requiem is only 17 gigs, so it's pretty small. So you get that whole AAA experience for 17 gigs. It's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I don't know what it is about Japanese game developers, but man, they know how to keep their game files small. I really love and respect that. That is just fantastic. American developers, for some reason, like Call of Duty is like 110 gigs. It's like, dude, why? Like, why are you needing like 100, 150, almost 200 gigabytes of a game? Like, I don't know. I'm not a fan. I just don't, Some of my favorite games of all times and games I still go back to play are like 3 gigs. You just don't need that. And those are HD titles. So it's like, what are we doing? Anyway, I'm getting off track. But overall, really optimistic about the Switch 2's future with third parties. I hope Elden Ring runs great. I would love to revisit that title. I platinumed it on PlayStation, but if I could play that on the Switch 2 at I know it's not going to be 60 frames because people have already said it's not. If it's the same frame rate as Resident Evil Requiem, like 40 or 50, I'll probably pull the trigger. But if it's 30 or less than 30, then it's going to be a no. And unfortunately, I have heard it's game key card, so that is disappointing. And then, of course, you're going to wonder how big is this file size going to be? Like, how much am I going to have to download onto the console itself to play it? So there are still variables for me. I'm still 50-50 on Elden Ring. And I'm also, unfortunately, 50-50 on Duskbloods because I'm not a big online player, and apparently that's going to be online only. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm optimistic about the releases from third parties coming in the future, as long as Capcom keeps putting out great titles. This makes me very excited for a possible Switch 2 Monster Hunter exclusive, like Monster Hunter Rise was for the Switch. Really hope we get one of those. But I'm optimistic. I'm feeling good. Indiana Jones looks to run great. Pragmata and Resident Evil 9 were great. Let's keep going. I would love to just buy all these on Switch 2 and just, kind of leave my PlayStation off to the side for GTA 6 in November. But to kind of circle back a little bit, this is the 30th anniversary of Resident Evil, and the franchise really has meant a lot to me over the years. And it's tough because since I'm out here living in Japan, it is called Biohazard, so I will always call it Resident Evil. I'll never call it Biohazard. I know that a lot of people will say that Biohazard is the better name. I highly disagree. Because here's a slight tangent on the name. I think Japan wants to call it Resident Evil. I think they really want to abandon the Biohazard name because I think they know that Resident Evil is a better name. Some of you may say, well, Logan, why is Resident Evil a better name? Because it is more marketable. It is way more marketable. If you Google Resident Evil, only one thing is going to come up. If you Google Biohazard, you're going to get so much stuff. So I'll give you an example. I started like looking around online for like Resident Evil merchandise out here, and I was like, oh, is there like a Resident Evil like Capcom store I could visit? And so I started typing in like Biohazard merchandise and Biohazard stuff, and it just was like coming up with like syringes and like Biohazard bags, like hospital supplies. And I was like, no, like the game. I had to define that it was the game I was looking for, and then it was like, oh, okay. But when I type in Resident Evil merch, what do you think came up? T-shirt of Leon Kennedy, right? It's immediate. It's much more marketable. The only thing that's called Resident Evil is that franchise, is those games. Biohazard is a very generic medical term that could mean anything, right? It could mean, oh, do you want to know about the cruise ship disaster that just happened? It's like, no, I want to know about the game that just came out. And my evidence for why Japan wants to change the name is that when I go to the game stores out here, if you look on the shelves at the Resident Evil games, so they recently re-released the RE2 remake, 3 remake, and 4 remake. Well, not 4 remake, sorry. They released some of those older titles from the PS4 onto the PS5. The title of the game is Biohazard RE2. Biohazard RE3. Like, why is there an RE there? It's for Resident Evil. Even Biohazard RE4. Like, I think they really want to change the name, but it's just been Biohazard for so long. Like, they know Resident Evil's a better name. But I don't know. Anyway, I love this franchise. It's been, a soft spot for me for many years. I was there on day one to play RE4 on the GameCube. As I said before, I loved the original remake that came on the GameCube back in 2002. That was really my first time I fell in love with it. I even really enjoyed playing Resident Evil 0 back in the day on the GameCube as well. Moved on to RE5 on the 360. I dabbled a little bit with 6, but I was like, this is just not the same. I was very excited when they came back with 7. I was like, here we go. We're back to it. And then, like I said, 8 was kind of a little bit of a disappointment for me because I was done with Ethan, and I was kind of like, okay, I just don't like the first person that much. I could do first person for like one game. But then finally, I was so happy with RE9 that they gave us a choice. Do you want to play in first or third person? And I'm happy to say I play with third person with Grace and Leon. I think that is the definitive way to play Resident Evil. I don't think Resident Evil is a first person franchise. I just personally, that's my opinion. You've always been able to see the character. I think that first person's too much like Outlast and some of those other other indie survival horror titles. I think one of my favorite things about the games are the characters. And I like to see the characters. I like to see Grace. I like to see Leon. I like to see Chris and Jill. These are characters I've known for a long time. And when you're in first person, you just don't really see them. You just like are them. And I don't know. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. But anyway, hopefully we get great DLC for Resident Evil Requiem later this year, another story expansion. That would be fantastic. I'm really loving the title. I can't stop playing it. I keep trying to go on and play Pragmata or something else, and I keep going back to Resident Evil 9. I just can't stop putting it. I can't put it down. But anyway, that'll probably about do it for me for today. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about this stuff. I appreciate it. And as always, take care of each other out there.